Most nights on The National, we give you contact information, an address, an email account, and a phone number, and ask for your thoughts on the stories we air. Well, last week, a story called Going, Going, Gone obviously touched a nerve. Almost immediately, the calls and emails started coming in, and even a week later, they're still coming. The topic, identity theft. The CBC's Red Sharon showed you just how quickly your private financial information, even your money, can disappear. In fact, even as our report was airing, the list of identity theft victims was growing.
My name is Beatrice Tentai, and I live in beautiful Oakville, Ontario. I have always been extremely careful with using my credit cards and my debit cards, but very much to my own surprise, I became identity victim myself just this past week. And that makes me wonder whether we wouldn't be much better off with discarding our credit card and debit cards and just paying by cash. It also makes me wonder, how can I prevent this from ever happening again?
It is a question we heard over and over. People wanting to keep from becoming the next victim of identity theft. And it isn't easy. Here's a note from Russell Foster of Georgetown, Ontario. He writes, while looking on the internet, I happened upon a Japanese company website. I didn't download or purchase anything. Miraculously, a few days later, I received an email from eBay stating my account had been compromised and I should reset my passwords, etc. Here's an example of an innocent visit to a website where they managed to steal part of my identity. Well, tonight we're going to spend some time answering your questions and comments, starting with Russell Foster's situation and the CBC's Red Sharon in Winnipeg tonight. Reg, you spoke with Russell. This sounds like a new wrinkle in the identity theft story. What's going on here?
He could be talking about Silent Banker. Now, remember that name, Silent Banker. It's being called one of the most sophisticated cyber attacks ever to hit the internet, and your computer could be infected simply by going to a website where the virus is waiting. Russell Foster used to like doing a little web surfing on his coffee break. Today, he's content to read the paper. At least he knows where the pages are coming from, not like a few months ago.
I was bored one day. I was looking for Tetris, this old archaic game, and I figured I could find it free somewhere to download.
He looked around what he thought was a Japanese website, but didn't buy or download anything. Still, within days, he was notified by PayPal and eBay that his e-commerce accounts had been compromised.
They probably could have gotten a lot more. I do all my personal banking on the same computer that I went looking for the game with.
You will not know that you picked it up. It will sort of embed itself in your computer.
Jeff Burton of the British Columbia Crime Prevention Association says Russell Foster was very lucky. There is a new virus out there called Silent Banker, and you can pick it up simply by visiting a website which triggers the virus to secretly download itself into your computer. Once infected, connecting to an e-commerce site, including your bank, will trigger it to start recording every keystroke you make, sending account numbers, PIN numbers, passwords back to the attacker.
This Trojan right now seems to be focusing on capturing banking information, but there's no reason why it could not be used, and probably already is being used to capture credit card information or passwords or any other sensitive information that we use every day.
Canada's big banks started seeing this latest virus about a month ago. But because the security breach actually occurs outside their security protection and inside your personal computer, the Canadian Banking Association says it's really up to the consumer to protect themselves.
Make sure you have a good firewall installed. Make sure you have antivirus, anti-spam, anti-spyware software, and any computer store can help you with that.
Now, Ian, banks here in Canada say they should be able to handle Silent Banker as long as you keep your computer software updated. That being said, there have already been reports that the clients of as many as 400 banks around the world have already been affected by this virus. And I should also say that the gentleman in our report, Russell Foster, he knows his way around computers, and he thought his antivirus software was updated. So.
Well, Reg, I don't know my way around computers, even though I'm online all the time. So how concerned should people like me be?
Well, I'm no expert either, but some of the things you can do is make sure that your passwords and your PIN numbers are changed quite frequently, probably more than you do now as well. And this might seem obvious, but don't use public computers to do online banking. For example, if you're on vacation or traveling for work, don't use that computer that's in the main lobby or the one in the business center to try and do your banking or contact any financial institutions. It's not a good idea. As well, once in a while you get a patch or an upgrade for your system software from the manufacturer. You should make sure those are installed on your computer.
But how big a problem is this? We keep hearing about how prevalent identity theft is, but I just wonder if these are the exceptional cases or if it's happening a lot out there.
It's happening a lot. As a matter of fact, if you talk to law enforcement agencies, they will tell you it's the fastest growing financial crime in the world.
All right, the CBC's Red Sharon reporting for us on this story. And in fact, stand by. We'll come back to you in just a moment. But let's hear another question, this one from British Columbia.
Hi, my name's Ron Tabbert from Golden, British Columbia. Your story on identity theft gave me the shivers. I never used my credit card on the internet, and now I probably never will. Today, because of your report, I used only cash. Will it come to that? Should it?
One viewer's reaction to our identity theft report, going, gone. Here's another from Mike Turner in Victoria, BC. Last year, I was one of the unlucky people whose credit card was compromised by the breach of security at Winners' parent company. I'd only used my card once at Winners, and it was many months prior to the breach. It seems unbelievable that anyone should be allowed to keep such sensitive data without my consent. The CBC's Darragh McIntyre met with Mike Turner and looked into his question.
In most ways, Mike Turner considers himself an average Canadian. He's building a new home outside Victoria, raising a family, and like most middle-class Canadians, he thinks not having a credit card is not really an option. So how, he wonders, can something so widely used be so easily stolen?
In the 3 times my card has been compromised, at no time were we ever informed how it was compromised. The first time, I'm pretty sure it was a skimming type of theft, but the second and the third time, I'm pretty sure it was a database theft.
Although the credit card company refused to confirm it, Turner thinks the last theft was part of a case that shocked consumers everywhere.
2 million Canadian credit card numbers stolen by hackers.
Just over a year ago, retail giant Winners and its American parent company, TJX, discovered hackers had broken into its database and stolen the personal information of millions of customers across the United States, the United Kingdom, and Canada.
I feel unsafe. I come to shop at Winners all the time.
The company, it turned out, had a policy of keeping that data on a computer server for 18 months.
I mean, 18 months is longer than the warranty period on most items that you buy at the store. I don't understand why they have to keep the data at all. You know, if I buy something with cash, they have no data.
Winners claimed it kept information in case of possible audits, customer challenges, and because credit card companies required them to. In fact, almost all retailers store your data for at least some period of time. According to Canadian privacy laws, companies can keep information for as long as is reasonably necessary. The law is vague intentionally. Data is collected by so many different kinds of companies for so many different reasons. Analysts say it is impossible to draft concrete limits that everyone could live with. Philippa Lawson of the Canadian Internet Policy and Public Interest Clinic says the more important issue is that the law doesn't really have teeth.
Consumers are entitled to lodge complaints with the Privacy Commissioner, and then the Privacy Commissioner can take up to a year under the law to investigate the complaint and come back to you and the organization you've complained about with a finding or a report. That finding has no legal status. It is not legally binding in any way on the organization. It's just a recommendation.
Privacy analysts say there should also be a law requiring companies to inform their customers of security breaches. They say retailers just might take data security issues more seriously if they thought customer confidence was at stake. Darragh McIntyre, CBC News, Vancouver.
Of course, it isn't just retail businesses that keep your financial information. At times, banks seem to spend as much time storing data as they do dollars. And that brings us to our next comment.
My name is Claudette Mancini. I live in Burlington, Ontario. Our family was recently the victims of both bank and credit card fraud. Even though we're very diligent with our personal papers, it wasn't enough. I think as a society we need to be a little more proactive by suggesting to our financial institutions ways that they can make their transactions more secure.
We handed this one to the CBC's Cass Rusey and sent her looking for some expert advice to keep thieves from breaking into your bank account.
It happens every day, in every city, at every hour. A visit to the nearby ATM. A quick transaction for some quick cash. Canadians are among the biggest users of debit cards in the world. But beware, one tiny slip-up here can expose you to identity theft.
So how do you protect yourself from the fraudsters? Well, first, protect your PIN number. And remember, it should be a secret. No one should know it but you. And don't choose an obvious number. When entering the PIN, shield the keypad. And if you're going to use an ATM, choose a location where you feel most secure. Sound obvious? Perhaps, but experts say that if you minimize the exposure to your card, you minimize the risk. Debit and credit card fraud is a thriving crime that's costing Canada's economy at least $2 billion a year. The Canadian Bankers Association offers ways to protect your credit cards, like never leave your cards unattended at work. There are more credit card thefts in the workplace than in any other single location. Never give your card number over the phone unless you're dealing with a reputable company. The only time you should give it is when you have called to place an order. And report lost or stolen cards immediately. Again, obvious tips, but experts say ignore them and you make it easy for the bad guys to use your card. That same common sense applies when you're shopping online. Technology expert Jesse Hirsch says be aware of potential security leaks. He takes us on a Canadian Tire website.
Here's one example, VeriSign Secured. So this is an alliance that basically, when you click on this, it'll say that we guarantee that this is CanadianTire.ca, that this is not some other website.
Look for the company's privacy policy. Look for the closed lock icon. This site has one. Other tips. The Canadian Bankers Association says you wouldn't give information to just anyone you meet on the street. Apply the same discretion online. Use hard-to-guess passwords. One of our viewers asked whether credit cards specifically tailored for online shopping is a wise idea. Our CMP inspector Barry Baxter specializes in ID fraud. He says yes.
Now you can indicate the levels of credit that you can obtain with that card. In this manner, if you are exposed to criminal activity, the possibility of your exposure on your entire financial history or personal information is extremely limited.
Our technology expert says cybercrime is like the flu. There just isn't any foolproof cure.
You know, with the flu, especially in flu season, there's only so much you can do to protect yourself. You can take the flu shot, which is used security software. You know, you can wear a scarf when you go outside, such as how software that protects you against certain websites. But fundamentally, you're going to get infected. If all your friends get sick, you will get sick too.
One last piece of advice. Be street smart when online shopping. It's up to the retailer to earn your trust with their website. If the trust isn't there, stop the transaction and just bail. Cass Rusey, CBC News, Toronto.
If you have questions about credit and your own credit rating, maybe you think your information has fallen into the wrong hands, here are a few places to turn. Tonight on The National, we're looking through your questions and comments on identity theft, all flowing from our report last week, Going, Going, Gone. From Portage La Prairie, a viewer writes, in the recent past, there have been large-scale breaches of personal and credit card information, yet nobody has been held accountable, nor has any legislation been put in place to ensure that it does not happen again. It seems to me that it is now about time that the practice of allowing businesses to protect customer confidentiality on a voluntary basis be ended and replaced with legislation requiring them to do so. A lot of people who wrote in asked about the law. As Darragh McIntyre reported earlier, there is some identity theft legislation already on the books dealing with how your data is collected, stored, and the big one, kept secure. But technology changes and Parliament has to make sure the law changes with it. Paul Hunter has a look on where identity theft legislation is going next.
It's hardly the place you'd expect any federal government to wade into. But whether it's dumpsters and the credit card slips that might be here for the taking, or your own email account overflowing with spam and the trickery aimed at learning more about you.
In fact, it's anywhere information can get passed or stolen, and it's exactly where the federal government wants to get involved. Stephen Harper has made identity theft a legislative priority.
Last fall, he listed it alongside more traditional serious crimes as a key target for new laws.
The RCMP has reported a dramatic rise in drug-related property crime, identity theft, corruption, and murder over the last 5 years.
In November, the Harper government tabled new legislation that would make it a crime to obtain or possess identity information with the intent to use it in a crime, to sell or trade identity information with that in mind, and to illegally possess or sell government-issued identification documents. Break the law, and it's up to 5 years in prison, and that's just some of what's in it. And though the bad guys could be forced to pay restitution under that law, what about those companies whose carelessness allowed that ID theft to happen in the first place? Canada's Privacy Commissioner says existing laws allow her to investigate what went wrong at companies targeted by identity thieves.
If we see that there is an obvious problem of misuse of personal information, if the problem is not repaired, it is not remedied, it is not settled, if the people who have been victims of any kind of damage do not obtain redress to their satisfaction and to our satisfaction is what is reasonable to redress, we can go to the federal court.
But usually, she says, compensation comes voluntarily. Critics say current laws should be tougher on companies that don't safeguard their customer data. Ottawa law professor Michael Geist, an expert on these matters, says there ought to be legislation forcing those companies to go public if hit by ID thieves.
It creates strong incentives for organizations to fully and adequately protect the information that's under their control, knowing that they're going to take a reputational hit if they fail to do so and then have to disclose this to all their customers.
And both Geist and the Privacy Commissioner say a key tool is still missing from current and proposed laws: anti-spam legislation.
We're the only country in the G8 that doesn't have anti-spam legislation. The Minister of Industry set up a task force about 3 years ago that said Canada should have strong anti-spam legislation, and we still don't have any.
Geist was on that task force.
Other countries have been moving much more aggressively on this issue than Canada has to date.
Talk in Ottawa now is an anti-spam plan is imminent as the other proposed legislation winds through Parliament. Is it enough? Ask an identity thief. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Ottawa.
We have time for one more question on tonight's follow-up to Going, Going, Gone. Alexandra Beamish wrote to us from Oakville, Ontario, saying, my son's wallet was stolen, and much to our surprise, when he applied for a new social insurance card, he was issued exactly the same number. It seems we're playing into the hands of these identity thieves. Wouldn't it be simple for the government to issue a totally different number, thus making the previous stolen number null and void? So let's bring Red Sharon back into this. What did you find out?
Well, Ian, I found out it's kind of difficult to get a straight answer to the question why from Services Canada. They did send us this email, and in it they say the policy is only to issue new social insurance numbers where there's an obvious case of fraud, and the onus is on you, who may have been affected, to prove that the fraud did occur, either by getting police reports or other documentation. However, they did go on to say that if there is no evidence of fraud, you're better off keeping the old social insurance number. And here's what they say. They say if we replace your SIN, you will have to contact all financial institutions, creditors, pension providers, and employers and ask them to update all their records for you, not just current records, but past records as also. And they go on to point out that getting a new number doesn't mean that you won't become a victim of fraud, because if the old number is still out there and somebody uses it, employers don't always check to see if it's legitimate.
All right. Thank you, Reg. The CBC's Reg Sharon in Winnipeg. Now, if you'd like to comment about anything you've heard tonight, get a pencil ready. We'll show you how to get in touch with us. And when we come back, your national weather forecast.